Welcome to the UK Pavilion. Welcome to this talent talk dedicated to immersive stories with TRAILBLAZER and tAxI. My name is Silvia Angrisani. I'm Industry Programs Manager at the BFI. I work in particularly on the industry events at the London Film Festival, and for the second year in a row, I've had the pleasure to curate this program of talks at the Pavilion. For people who may not see us here or online, each of us will give a short visual descriptions of themselves. So I'm a white woman with very short hair, salt and pepper, more salt than pepper, year after year, and I'm wearing blue shirt and a blue and white pair of trousers. As you can hear, English is not my mother tongue, not even my second language, so bear with me. Next to me, I have the tAxI team, Oriana Neidecker, creative producer, and Stephen Henderson, director. Oriana is a creative producer focused on immersive storytelling, emerging technology, and artificial intelligence. She works with artists and engineers to develop large-scale and multisensory experiences. Welcome, Oriana. Would you describe yourself a little bit?
So I'm a white woman with brunette hair that's pulled back, a black silk set, and some red slippers.
Thank you. Stephen is a multidisciplinary artist and programmer with a background in architecture, spatial design, and education. He was previously at Marshmallow Laser Fest. His personal work has been internationally exhibited from South Korea to Venice and London. Stephen, would you describe yourself?
Hello, my name is Stephen. I am also brunette. I'm also wearing some kind of black silky thing. And I have white sneakers on.
Thank you. Next, we have the TRAILBLAZER team. Eloise Singer, who is the director, co-writer, and executive producer. Eloise is an Emmy-nominated and award-winning producer, writer, and director, and the founder of Singer Studios. She created The Pirate Queen, starring Lucy Liu, which shot to critical acclaim, winning the Storyscape Award at Tribeca Film Festival. She then created TRAILBLAZER, which had the premiere in Venice, and is here out of competition at Cannes Immersive, starring Daisy Ridley. She also executive produced Rare Beasts, starring Billie Piper, and The Last Rifleman. Eloise, would you describe yourself?
Hi, I'm Eloise. I am a white woman with mousy blonde hair. Some people say that's strawberry blonde, but I prefer mousy blonde, to be honest. I am wearing all white and a black pair of trainers.
Thank you. Leslie Patterson, who is the executive producer of TRAILBLAZER. Leslie is an Oscar and BAFTA-winning filmmaker, and hold your breath, she's also a 5-time world champion professional triathlete. And if I may share this with the audience, Leslie, I've just learned that your nickname is the Scottish Rocket. Leslie is also in our industry. She's the founder of Brave Art Entertainment, a production company dedicated to creating bold and impactful scripted and unscripted projects. She co-wrote and executive produced All Quiet on the Western Front, and the film received worldwide acclaim, winning multiple Oscars and BAFTAs. Leslie, would you like to visually describe yourself?
Yeah, hi everybody. I am Scottish, but don't look it. I'm white, but I have a tan. I am very short. Some would say petite, not petite, petite. I'm wearing a green florally top, black shorts, and a pair of boots.
Thank you very much. So we have a wonderful panel to explore 2 immersive stories. So TRAILBLAZER out of competition and tAxI in competition in Cannes Immersive. Let's start with TRAILBLAZER. So we are in Germany, 1888. Carl Benz has just patented the first motor car, but both the press and the public are skeptical. Recognizing that the world needs to see the invention in action, his wife, Bertha Benz, embarks on a journey across Germany, the first road trip by car. Can we play the trailer, please?
The entire audience is holding its breath, and there he goes. This could be dangerous. Looks like he doesn't have it fully under control. He is now shaking. Can he steer it back? No, and poor Carl has hit the wall with his new invention.
Beautiful, isn't it? They'll never understand until they see it. It's now or never. I promise you'll thank me later for this, Carl. Here we go.
Thank you. Eloise, so first question is, what's the origin of this story? How was Trailblazer born?
It's a very good question. When everyone asks me this, I always wish I could say that I learned about Trailblazer because I was hiking through, the Black Forest in Germany, and I came across this house, and I met this woman, and she told me this amazing story. But the reality is that I just found it on Wikipedia. And I was researching another story, and I literally just came across this incredible narrative about a woman who stole her husband's invention and went on the world's first road trip. And I just couldn't believe that, one, it was a story that I and seemingly no one I knew actually knew about. And two, that we've always had this misconception that engineering is a very male-dominated space. And yet it was so ironic that it was a woman who was the first person to take a car out on the road. And then the more I looked into it, the more I realized that not only did she go on this road trip, but she went at a time where it was illegal for women to travel by themselves. And everyone was calling her a witch and saying that her work was the work of the devil. So I just was compelled at that moment to tell the story.
And what was the creative production journey for Trailblazer, and how did you and Leslie met?
We have a very cute story. It's amazing. The creative journey behind it was we started developing it, and it was at the same time as I was developing the Pirate Queen. And we were developing the Pirate Queen, and we decided to develop Trailblazer into a VR experience because I thought, how amazing would it be to be able to drive the world's first car? You can't just go to a garage and be like, hi, sorry, can I just do a test drive of the world's first car, please? Like, that doesn't happen. And so VR is such a unique and exciting way to be able to tell that story. And so we developed it and we premiered it at Venice. And then I was doing a podcast series called Women Behind the Scenes. And one of the interviews, actually it was the first interview that I ever did for this series, and it was with this woman called Leslie Patterson, and she was doing a small awards run for this movie that no one really had heard of called All Quiet on the Western Front. And I sat down and we were surrounded by kind of all of the Netflix PR and like the entirety of our team, and it was all sort of a big thing, and we just sat down and had the most like holistic and honest conversation and really just connected as two human beings in quite a glitzy, superficial environment. And at the end of it, Leslie sort of, bear in mind there's literally a foot difference between us, like she sort of popped up and was like, we should find something to do together, we should work together. And I just thought she was being very like nice and polite, and she mentioned that she lived in LA, and I was like, okay, yeah, that would be lovely. Anyway, Leslie goes on to smash life, win all of the Oscars and the BAFTAs. I'm sitting there on the sofa in my pajamas, like cheering her on, being like, I met her once. And then about a year later, the Pirate Queen was nominated for an Emmy. So I was on a flight to LA, and there was this blonde, petite woman sitting in front of me. And I did a bit of a double take, and she stood up, and I tapped her on the shoulder. I was like, Leslie. And she was like, oh my God, I remember you. You interviewed me for a podcast for All Quiet about a year ago. We have to find something to do together. We have to work together. And so literally the next day we sat down and I told her about Trailblazer, and immediately she was just like, I'm in, let's do it.
And Leslie, what attracted you in the idea of Trailblazer?
Yeah, I think it's two things. I love female empowerment stories and stories that have never been told before. But I think first and foremost, when you meet someone like Eloise, who's just incredible and her energy is amazing, her talent is amazing, you just want to work with those kind of people. And that's the biggest thing I've learned in my journey with All Quiet. It took 16 years to get off the ground. So it's like you want good people around you. So yeah, so that was a really exciting journey to embark on.
And for TRAILBLAZER, what were the main production challenges that the two of you met?
Well, it's been an interesting one. I think from the sort of physicality of creating VR, we basically designed the driving mechanic from scratch. And to drive in VR is a very difficult thing to do because it sometimes invokes nausea. So we did a lot of R&D with that to make sure that how we were setting up the driving really worked and it made it fun. But it's an interesting project because we were very lucky about how it has developed and the traction that it has got. And I mean, I sort of pitched it to Leslie, and then together, we brought on Daisy Ridley, and I had previously worked with Daisy on a film about 8 years ago, and we went out to her agent, and very, very luckily, Daisy said yes within 2 days of us sending her the materials. So
is it the whole story about you meeting Daisy Ridley? Can you tell us why did you think that Daisy wanted to come on board with this project?
I think similarly to Leslie, Daisy's all about female empowerment stories, and we worked on a film together called, again, small film called Murder on the Orient Express, about 9 years ago now. And bizarrely, in another life, I trained as a chef. And so on this film, I was a film foods, I know, Denise, it's really strange. I trained as a chef, and on this film, I was a film food stylist, and my boss at the time, I know, my boss at the time actually tripped over a nail on the film, and so she couldn't continue working on the film, so I was doing all of the food styling on this movie by myself, which, if you've ever seen Murder on the Orient Express, is huge. Anyway, so I was making these dishes, and Ken was running around putting them on set and things like that. And so I met Daisy on this movie, and when I told her agent that I worked on Murder on the Orient, he was like, "Oh, I'll mention it to her." And when we met for the recording session, she was like, "I remember you from Murder on the Orient 9 years ago." And I was like, "No way." And she was like, "Yeah, I remember because the food was really good." And I was like,
that's fantastic.
Best compliment of my life. So yeah, I have a suspicion that she sort of said yes because it was a combination of working with someone that she sort of knew and working on a project that was just amazing and badass. So it was a nice match.
And because this is a VR experience, 20 minutes more or less long, so you decided to select one specific episode of Bertha Benz story. How did you choose what to select?
Very good question. I think with any story, there's always an inciting incident. And this was such a pivotal moment that it really felt like this was the kickoff point, and we wanted to dive in. And the way that sort of we tell stories in VR at my company, and our sort of USP is through environmental storytelling. So we create really quite beautiful environments, and then we allow audiences to go around and be able to pick up objects to learn about the backstory within the narrative. So with TRAILBLAZER, we actually designed, you sort of saw a little bit in the trailer, but we designed an animation that was inspired by the world's first film. And a lot of people who play the experience think that it's a real film, but it's not. It's an animation that we created from scratch. And it's designed to sort of show the backstory of what happened, because effectively 2 years before Bertha decided to take the invention out onto the road, her husband, Carl, decided to show the car to the world, but he lost control of it and he crashed it into a wall. And as a result, he was so ashamed that he sort of buried himself away and didn't want to take it out. And so that's why she decided to go on this road trip. And I think that's what's so special about the story, is that it's a narrative that's actually filled with love. It's not something that she's defying her husband or that she's going against him. She just wants to show his invention to the world. And I think that's what's so special and interesting about it.
And I have to say, if you play the game or if you play the story, you may also have the opportunity to crash the car into the wall. I did it twice.
Happens a lot.
But it was really, really funny. And one last question before coming to tAxI team. So your previous one was the Parrot Queen. And it's again a story, a forgotten story about a forgotten character in our history. I think again 19th century, but this time in China. So how is this key in your editorial line? Because Leslie was also saying, I want to tell stories of empowerment, of female empowerment. Can you tell us a little bit more about your editorial choices for both of you?
Yeah, I mean, I have quite a few projects. I think I love history because it's so informative and it also takes us back to different worlds that are exciting and interesting, different cultures. So texturally, it says something different, I think. And it's also a form of escapism. So, you know, I have a couple of other projects about, you know, famous females in history as well. Yeah, and you know, history or the truth truly is, you know, better than fiction sometimes.
Yeah, I agree. And also I find it ironic that history is literally called his story. We talk about this a lot, and I'm like, actually, there are so many women from history that their narratives just haven't been told. And I think for us, because we often develop things in VR first, the power of VR is that you can step back in time. Like, you're going to these environments and these places that you can't in real life. And that's so exciting. And being able to then expand it into a film or into a TV series from that is just a bit of a dream come true, to be honest.
Thank you. So let's hold on a moment with the first motor car, and we'll jump into a different car. So this time it's a taxi, but it's a vintage taxi. We don't drive ourselves. There is a driver. So with TRAILBLAZER, we have a headset. I don't know how many of you have had the possibility to experience TRAILBLAZER. But TRAILBLAZER, you have a headset, whereas with tAxi, you get in a real taxi. You sit comfortably in a very cozy setting. There are candles, and you can see through the windows a cityscape. And then all of a sudden, there is a taxi driver's voice asking you, where do you want to go? What's your destination? So let's play the trailer first of all.
Hello, I'm tAxi. Make yourself comfortable. Where are we going today?
This one time, I think I was 19 years old.
On the third date, he was like, do you want to go to the Bahamas with me? And I'm like, wait.
That's crazy.
Yeah, money.
For the majority of my past relationships, I've been unfaithful.
I found a letter that she had written him that said, "I'm glad I let you fuck me."
I remember being in a panic mode asking for my mother.
Have you ever felt betrayed?
Betrayal.
I was like, okay, maybe I'm in love with him. Like, I don't know. Like, he's fucking, like, playing ping pong with my hemorrhoid. I'm like, we're obviously in love.
We've reached your destination.
So this is tAxi. And my first question is the same as for TRAILBLAZER. What's the origin of this story? Why, how was tAxi born?
So tAxi's similar but different. It's about everyday stories, and it's about everyday human creativity. It's about the stories that we tell to each other, and because of that, what we wanted to do was build on the work that Michael and Yamil, the other two directors on the project, have been doing, which is to kind of collect this archive of stories and to create someone or something that is able to deliver that archive to a new audience, to different audiences. So it's just really somebody that sits in the middle, an opinionated somebody that sits in the middle and inflects on the stories that she has collected, her own retelling or narrative about those stories. So we at Nilor, the studio that has been developing it, have been working on software tools for about the last 18 months. And then in the last 3 or 4 months, we've put together a team that involves the other two directors, Michael and Yamil, who have been doing this kind of archival work. And therefore, we've kind of made a system that can do this archiving, this storytelling, and this collecting and retelling. But we've also kind of made an immersive piece that we sit inside that both demonstrates that system and allows people to have an experience of these stories rather than just hearing them, let's say.
And so in this taxi ride, there are two main characters. One is the passenger, the other one is the taxi driver. And the passenger changes every time, and the taxi driver stays the same, but perhaps it's not true. Perhaps it's not the same taxi driver each time. So I'd like to ask you to introduce your character, your AI taxi driver. And first of all, how do we address them, him, her? Is it a she? Is it a he? Can you let us know a little bit more?
Yeah, so tAxI is an AI persona that we spent a long time really crafting and prompting their personality. Yamil, one of our directors, comes from a traditional theater background and worked with our developer, Ale, to really build the framework to break apart almost the blocking points of different LLMs and make our own system that gave the freedom to Jo, as we call her, to really explore. And, there were things that were blocked that they weren't able to kind of move into, but then they really had the freedom to move within the space to create a different and curious experience each time. They had a full backstory that really informed how they would converse with people and had this archive of stories that they could build upon. So when a passenger gets in, tAxI asks them, where you want to go, and begins to poke and prod and take these kind of trying to extract these stories out of them in a very human way and finding parallels with other stories that have been shared, and then is able to kind of share that, and the whole system moves around you and the visuals match with the stories that you're telling in a sometimes, straight on way or sometimes abstract and surreal. And
well, I just thought I'd add that it's important to mention the voice as well. The voice is something that we want to try and get away from our traditional convenient interactions that we have with technology at the moment, with Alexa and with Siri and these kind of like smooth experiences. And Michael, our director, interviewed somebody called Barbara, who's this amazing woman from New Orleans, who he met because of her voice, overhearing her voice in a supermarket or a grocery store. And she has this kind of like real deep, thick accent. She brings like this coarseness and a vulgarity that is quite befitting of a taxi driver trope, that kind of lets people become comfortable talking to her and at the same time have this little sense of unease and discomfort. So we created this intimate space that people get inside of the cab, and then they have this interaction that is not necessarily as straightforward as it seems. She kind of is a little bit aggressive at first, but as the interaction develops, she becomes somebody that is your friend, that is there to hear your story and to kind of engage with your story and to draw parallels between all of our stories. So her voice during the production process really, really changed the personality that we made for this taxi driver. We had been building on tropes and building on the ways in which people might want to be talked to, but as soon as we got her voice, we really had to just kind of change everything, go back to the drawing board and just draw from her actual personality. And that, I think, has been a really important part of the reaction that we've had to the experience so far.
How many languages does tAxI speak?
She can speak 50 languages, and I feel like at this festival we've tested lots and lots of them. There is a component to the visuals that you're seeing go past you as well, which is the transcript of what you have said and the transcript of what she has said become part of the visuals. And that's also been one of our production challenges, is supporting those languages and supporting them visually as well. So, I don't know, scripts like Hindi we had during the festival, or Mandarin during the festival. We have to be able to support all of those languages in a similar way, and the inflection and the kind of splitting up of sentences into little parts and how they become part of the visuals is a real challenge. But we've had amazing feedback from people who have seen one or two of their words float past after they've had a conversation about grief or death or something kind of dark, and it really has an impact to see those things reflected in the piece. It's also a really light-hearted interaction too. It's not all like doom and gloom. But the nice thing about setting up an interaction like this is that people can tell whichever story they want. She reacts in whichever way is kind of appropriate. And so they really lead and guide the story in a way that's been very difficult to do in interactive or more passive media in the past.
And I don't know if you had the possibility to test this, but do you think that the personality changes according to the language, or is it the same taxi driver?
She does, yeah. We had somebody go through in Farsi the other day and said she was actually quite polite, which during the testing process, we've managed to test very many languages. Farsi wasn't one of them. We knew that she supported it, but we don't have anybody on hand or easily available that we could get to verify that. And so in lots of the languages, she swears quite a lot, but apparently in Farsi, she's quite nice. So, yeah.
Great. And so, because this was the first time it was shown, from all the people who have tested it so far, who have had the experience, do you have any stories that could be interesting for us to understand this type of interaction?
Yeah, I mean, as a producer, it's been really interesting to bring this project to the public and be kind of delighted and surprised by it consistently. Every day there's something new, a new story, a new language, a new form of interaction that is, exciting to like uncover, almost as if you're, meeting new sides of a person. We've had a really wide spread of experiences. Some people go in and they're a little bit more shy and reserved, and they want to give one-word answers, and that's fine, and they can hear more stories, but it doesn't go as deep, kind of getting within their narrative. But some people really open up, and the being alone in a car, talking to yourself, to this AI voice, in this kind of confessional space that we tried to create to make this kind of warm environment, people really are opening up and sharing kind of deeper stories of tragedies in their life or difficulties that they're trying to overcome, and really open up and go deeper, and then in response kind of get know that the tAxI's on their side, and they get shared relevant stories from other people that have gone through. And then we've had just some like crazy stories come out. Like the other day I was in the car talking to tAxI when we were getting set up in the morning, and I told her about a Black Mirror episode that I had just watched, and then she told me about this time that they were at a club with this tech guy that put a contraption on their head, and then she felt this zap and got really scared, and she thought that he was trying to steal her soul, so she went and hid in her cab and then didn't speak to him ever again. And it was like so amazing to see that evolve, and
So what at the beginning you were talking about an archive. So how has this AI been trained? On which were the first stories?
Well, so a lot of the stories that went into it at the beginning are stories that Michael had been collecting or that Yumel had been writing and adding to the archive. But we all, as a team, have been through the process as well and shared things with it. And so it's got this kind of initial bank. But the reason Oriana is being slightly coy about not revealing all of the information of the stories is because we have a waiver that people sign at the beginning saying that their stories will only be used in this private context of her doing the retelling, that we remove the name, that we remove the voice and all of that kind of stuff. So unfortunately, I'm not going to divulge anybody's secrets here on stage. But we did divulge our secrets to tAxI so that it could better kind of improvise and develop the way in which it talks. And as I mentioned at the beginning, she has this personality that necessarily and importantly kind of smashes people's stories together, changes them around a little bit. It's almost like somebody misremembering a passenger from 2 years ago and getting it confused with somebody else. And so there's this development and evolution of the bank of stories, the archive of stories, that just increases every time somebody goes through it. So yeah, the goal is that that can develop, and that as a system, we can transplant that into lots of different contexts. We can have a different type of person, a different type of archive, a different type of experience. But as a studio, we're building a system that means that it's a storytelling system, and it's ready for like the next opportunity as well.
And before going to the next step, which is storytelling, one last question concerning tAxI in particular. I understand that you are a creative team with different and complementary skills and background. How did this team come together?
So Stephen and I met a few years back when we were working at Marshmallow Laser Feast that a few members of our team had worked at, and they're involved with our studio as well. And 18 months ago, Lucas, our founder, and Stephen, our co-founder, created Nilor to focus on making using AI to create immersive experiences at scale. And then, we got introduced to Yamil and Michael through Lucas, who had a previous working relationship with them as well. They'd collaborated on film and music together. And Yamil and I were both in Miami, and then it was just great kind of getting everybody together and bringing all the pieces from their different backgrounds. Michael is traditionally a filmmaker. Yamil has worked in film. Stephen came from architecture and education and then programming, and everyone on our team kind of has these very mixed backgrounds that kind of cross-pollinated well in order to be able to create these kind of storytelling experiences that are, really heavy in tech, in build, but then trying to just create really human stories within that where you don't actually feel the tech as you're going through.
Great. And Eloise and Leslie, TRAILBLAZER is a VR experience, but is going to become a feature film and a graphic novel as well. And I think, Eloise, it was a similar, the path of the Pirate Queen was a little bit similar. So VR experience, then in the future TV series, graphic novel. So how do you choose the medium which comes first? And does your way of telling a story changes according to the medium, and how?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, with both of them, I think the Pirate Queen and TRAILBLAZER lend themselves to VR because they're experiences that you can't experience in real life. Like, you can't drive the world's first car in real life. You can't, explore a 19th century pirate ship in real life. And I think the way that we want to tell those stories in VR is very immersive, and you get to step into the shoes of these women. And as a result, because you have the agency, there's a creation of empathy that you can't achieve on a traditional 2D sort of screen. And I think that's what sort of makes VR stand out in a way. But we very much design stories specifically to the audiences and the format that we want to tell, don't we?
Yeah, definitely. And so in building it out for the feature film, I've worked with my creative team to really dig into more of the research. Who was she? The time before the journey, the time after the journey. And then one of the biggest things that I certainly do, and Eloise shares this as well, is what is this story all about, and why is it important, and why do we want to tell it now? And so I think with this story specifically, with Bertha, she didn't get any, she wasn't on the patent. She wasn't getting any kudos for any of the designs, and yet she was so influential. So I really feel like it's a story about how, as women, we stand on the shoulders of others that have sacrificed before us. So I very much look at the architecture in terms of how we're building that out.
And I think the beauty is that VR is just a snapshot. It's a 20-minute experience. With Pirate Queen, it's an hour to an hour and a half, and yet the opportunity to turn it into a feature film, as Les says, you can expand and really delve into the narrative, into who she was, into the full backstory, and really give the audience an understanding of kind of the full journey that she went on. And the same with Pirate Queen, making that into a TV show, we can really dive into all of the different facets of the narrative. So I think it's really exciting, and it's sort of the first time that VR is being developed into film and TV in this way, which is cool.
It's really clever. It's really clever. It's a form of IP. It's, you know, you're testing your audience. But Eloise has been able to get big names to come on board the VR because it's actually quite a small proposition. You know, come and do a bit of voiceover for a day, but then you get, you know, massive association with a big name. Then, you know, they love Eloise, they love the project, then they've come on board a feature film, which is a huge way to package and get something actually made.
Yeah.
And why the graphic novel? Why this specific medium?
I think I just love graphic novels. Like, I'm just such a nerd. I really am. I'm such a nerd. And I love that form of storytelling. I think it's really exciting. And it's so visually rich. It's also another way to build out an IP, to expand a brand, to grow in a different audience. I don't know. I just finished, Lucy Liu and I are co-writing the graphic novel for Pirate Queen. And we just finished writing it. And we just had so much fun. It's so fun. It's a great medium, and I'm just a nerd.
And in terms of storytelling, when it comes, Oriana and Steven, to other forms of immersive, in a similar way, you write, but something stays open, and it's each passenger, each visitor, each user which continues the story. So how do you feel about this kind of writing where you are not in control of the whole story? Is it frustrating, exciting?
No, I think kind of similar to what you're saying. Like every person's story is interesting. We all impact each other, and we all impact each other in kind of 5-minute moments. Often, a little chat that you have here might stick with you for like a really, really long time. And the process of making work where you don't have total control over it. I mean, we've been working to build systems where we have as much control as we possibly can, but still getting to that point where you allow control to slip away from you is really rewarding. It's actually something where, whether it's in the hands of the AI or whether it's in the hands of the audience or whoever's hands it's in, it gives agency to that thing, that person, and I just think it makes for something richer. And we've got a lot of experience in immersive storytelling, but often those models of interaction reward a very certain type of interactor, somebody who's very willing to interact, somebody who's happy to be in a public space moving their arms around in front of a projection. Lots of work that we did at previous studios or in different places has this method, and it's a great method, it's really good, but often it rewards somebody who really wants to interact. And so I think what we've made here, we've found from how people have come out of it and what they've been saying about it afterwards. Oriana mentioned the kind of shy people who are then able to release a little bit of a story. I really want to say somebody's story, but I can't. So somebody missed a train. They were annoyed about it. And in so doing and mentioning this, the taxi driver was able to get out of them that they were allowed to be annoyed. And this person came out afterwards and just said that it made them feel really free to be annoyed, which I just thought was like some of the best feedback that I've had on any piece, because it's changed somebody's mind from when they went in to when they came out. And all of that has happened when we've let go of the reins, when we've allowed the system that we've built to do the thing that it's supposed to, and for somebody else to create their input, to receive an output, and to really just take it with them on their day. So that was like, it's really, really small moments like that have a lot of impact for me in the immersive space. And yeah, I think that's important.
Eloise or Leslie, do you want to comment or contribute about the feeling of not being in control with an interactive experience? How is it for you?
I think it's magical because you get to experience humanity. And I think when you do tell a story, it's in the eye of the beholder anyway, whether it's in the form of cinema or VR. And that's the beauty of it. Everyone's getting their own experience. And it's been so fun to watch people here go through the VR and bimble around. And even me, I mean, you were having such a hoot because I was just so excited. You're so in it. And you're, you know, stumbling and, you know, I mean, it's, yeah.
Watching Les play it was amazing. Because, okay, imagine, like, 5-time world triathlete, like, smashing life. And Les, like, put on the headset, was asking some questions about the controllers, and she'd be like, Eloise, how do I do this? And how do I... And I would be there explaining to her, and then suddenly she just got it. Like, honestly, I've never seen anyone in VR like this before. She just completely got it, and there was silence. And it was like this laser focus, like smashing through it, and I've never seen someone more concentrated. And it, like, I saw the athlete come out, I was like, wow, I could see why she's won, to like see why she's a world champion. It's so interesting. You discover people's characters when they go into these worlds, and I think that's what's so special about immersive, because you immerse yourself, you lose yourself, and the sort of the true you comes out, which is fascinating.
And we have been mentioning audiences. So when you write, and when you write interactive or immersive, for these two experiences, what are the audiences you were thinking of? Were you thinking about a particular age group? Were you thinking a particular type of audience who is familiar with games, who is familiar with immersive? What was your first audience in your mind?
I think we've actually had the most difficulty with audiences that have a lot of experience of the technology that we're working with, because they have a level of expectation that is around, I don't know, for example, what the tech should be doing when they talk to it or when they interact with it. And somehow that has created like a little bit more friction than people who are completely new to it. Other people who have never experienced something immersive before have had this strange experience where they sit inside, they start having a conversation that's like maybe a little bit rough around the edges in terms of what it looks like and what it feels like, and somehow it all kind of just works together to get something out of them. So I would say we hadn't intentionally designed it for those people, but I think those are the people that have benefited the most from doing the experience.
And I would add to that, we said PG-13 because, you know, there's some language. But I think in terms of how we wanted to build it, there wasn't necessarily, you know, an audience in mind, but it allows people to kind of holds up a mirror to ask them to question their own beliefs, you know. tAxi was inspired by thinking about this kind of speculative future where we have these autonomous self-driving cars, you know, that are appearing, and what does the future look like if, you know, we lose the human aspect of these car rides? And, you know, I took a Waymo for the first time about a month ago, and, you know, it's this crazy, surreal experience, but it's very sterile. And so it's like, can we, you know, is there another future of what that could look like? What are these different versions? And how audiences interact and then how they feel about it as well is really kind of curious. Like, do I feel more safe because it's not a person? Do I feel less safe? What is, you know, really like drawing them in? So, yeah.
And TRAILBLAZER, were there audiences you were thinking about?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I always think VR really surprises me because with Pirate Queen, for example, we initially started that, and it's about a woman, you step into a woman's shoes, and so we were like, okay, maybe it will be, and it's VR, so we were like, maybe it will be kind of like 18 to 32 and predominantly women who would play it, and it's literally the opposite. Like, it's majority men, it's kind of all different ages, but I think people just are really curious about the story, and one thing that we've seen is that, and I find it really exciting and quite refreshing, is that men have no concerns about stepping into the shoes of a woman and embodying a woman. And with Pirate Queen, we literally designed rings, and we designed the hands to be very bespoke to demonstrate that she was a woman, and you are embodying a woman and a female pirate, and that's like the whole point of the story. And I can remember one of the exec producers that we were working with at the time was like, oh, do you really want to show that, like, the rings on the hands, and do you think that men will actually be quite worried about relating to a female character and they might not want to step into this character? And our lead artist, who's a guy, was like, absolutely not. Like, we have to have female hands. Like, we have to lean into the fact that it is a woman. And as a result, it's been so fascinating because it just never has been a problem. Like, everyone puts on, they're like, oh my God, the hands are so cool. So I've always been really surprised in that instance of, like, there hasn't been this fear of, or like this gender divide with the narratives that we've created, and everyone just thinks it's really cool. And I think also there is this concept of a Trojan horse in storytelling where, you know, if you say to anyone, do you want to be a pirate? I think everyone would say yes. And then you go on this journey and you realize that actually it's about, you know, gender equality and female empowerment, and people just buy into it because they are stepping into the shoes of this person. And in a way, it's the same with TRAILBLAZER. You know, it's like, do you want to drive the world's first car? Yeah, everyone wants to do that, unless you don't like driving, which ironically I don't drive, and it's so ironic that I've made this project when I literally hate driving. But anyway, VR is safe to crash. But so I just think it's really interesting. With this one, we really didn't think of an audience. We didn't have an audience in mind. We just wanted to tell the story. And I think that comes across quite holistically.
And one last question for me before opening up to your questions. And this is about cinema and immersive. We are in a film festival which has opened up to immersive, and I come from the film and television industry, so from traditional media, and both of your experiences are single-user experiences. And I was wondering whether you feel that in order to gain more in-depth sensory experience, you have to lose the collective dimension that you have when you go and see a film in a theater. So what's your personal takes on this dichotomy, if there is a dichotomy, between individual and collective?
Oh, wow, that's a tough question. I didn't feel like I was an individual when I'm personally in the VR experience. I feel like it's enhancing a world that is collective. So it doesn't feel like it's a separation for me. So how I would utilize it as a storyteller is to enhance, not take away. And how I see maybe its use in the future is you get to experience, hopefully with ours, the film, and then you get to go into this experience as well, and vice versa. So you're doing both. You're utilizing both the collective and the individual, and you're talking about it. Because everybody that's used the VR, you know, they come out of it and you have a great discussion about it, and it's your experience in it, just like I'm sure it is with tAxi.
I was going to say that we worked on a piece before with Marshmallow Laser Feast called Evolver that was here last year, and that was a multi-user experience. And I think more so in the immersive community than maybe in the film community, it's kind of known about that there's the possibility for these collective interactions and the collective storytelling within them. So I think when it comes down to these pieces, or our piece, at least I can only speak for us, is that there is a decision-making process, and for us it was to involve you in this really intimate, singular experience. We've talked, as the week has gone on, with like different people about versions of it that could have few people in the backseat, and I think that is an interesting idea in terms of like group therapy, or being able to bounce ideas off your friends, or what actually might happen in the back of a cab on your way to a night out, or from a night out, or something like that. But it's a different piece, actually. It's a kind of shift, and it doesn't create this small, private, inner sanctum sharing mechanism, which is what we really wanted to do with that piece. So we kept it short as an experience, and we've managed to get many people through. So in terms of like a distribution model that is comparable to film or something, it's, I don't know, an hour and a half or a 2-hour movie that gets this many people into the cinema. I guess we probably get a similar number of people through the experience in a similar amount of time. But it's a different thing. It's designed not to be a collective experience, and the collectivity is mediated through this storytelling archive and not on a kind of one-to-one basis or one-to-group basis.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? I think we should have a mic. Yes, there is one question in the back.
Thanks, guys, and congratulations on all your success. And the films look great, to be honest. I have a question. I guess I'm speaking for a lot of indie filmmakers, and please go into the depth that you feel comfortable in talking about. But when it comes to budgeting and financing and getting the money to get your projects made, can you explain a little bit about what the budgets were for your projects, how you got the financing for it, and give some advice to all of us independents who are being told by a lot of the sales agents and distributors, well, go make it with your friends, make it great, and then we'll buy it from you.
Does anyone?
I can take that for tAxi. Our situation was a little bit unique because Nilor, as a studio, our focus is creating immersive work using AI at scale. So, you know, we're a young company, and we've really just been building out our technical stack on how we can use AI to generate images, videos, project them in complicated AV spaces, create these personas, and like constantly test and iterate them. So we've done a number of commercial projects and then artistic projects that really kind of help our team build the system that we want to be building, and often in ways that we weren't even really expecting. And so we were able to build tAxi, you know, within 4 months on top of this system without, you know, having to create all of that from scratch. So it was really kind of an example of what we can do with our work, and wanting to partner with other creative studios and artists to be able to create these pieces. And then also just, you know, some, you know, that we got a grant from the BFI that also allowed us to be here and being out from Cannes. So yeah, that was.
Thank you. TRAILBLAZER, do you want to share something about how challenging or how easy it is to finance, to produce this kind of work?
Yeah, we're also a bit of a public funding poster kid. So with Pirate Queen, we got a grant from Creative England, sort of back in the day, the New Ideas Fund. And we made a prototype of Pirate Queen that then won at Raindance Film Festival. And then we showed that to Meta, and Meta were like, this is really good. And we were like, oh, thanks so much. And they were like, no, this is really good. We'll like fund it to be a full thing. And so we then created Pirate Queen with the funding that we got from Meta, and from sort of some of the profits that we got from that, we then put that into TRAILBLAZER to develop sort of the first part of TRAILBLAZER. And then we applied to the UK Games Fund, which is part of the BFI, it's like supported by the BFI basically, and DCMS. And we got the funding from the UK Games Fund to develop the full version of TRAILBLAZER, and then have just released it on Meta. So they're distributing it. So we released on Meta on Friday. And interestingly, we're actually choosing to release on Meta for free. So we're not actually putting a price point in. And the reason that we're doing it is because we very much want everyone to learn and experience the story, and we don't want to put a paywall in. And we've been very lucky that with public funding, we've been able to create the projects. So it sort of makes sense. But yeah, it's been a very interesting model from that perspective, because it's a combination of public funding, but then also sort of new forms of funding from Meta.
Yeah, and I would also just add, as not the money guy, but as the tech guy, the nice thing about the things that I think all of us are working with is that so much of the information and the development and all of the technology really around the things that we're building, lots of it is built on top of open source work that is shared, that's in the public domain, that's really available for people to use. And with the advent of the tools that we're seeing in the last couple of years, the access to those things is becoming way, way easier. So we had, the boom of bedroom music producers. We're getting a different wave of indie development is kind of possible now. And I think that probably all of us, to some degree, are kind of evidence of that, where we're able to create things at a small scale and scale them up massively. And so what you're saying about build it with your friends and then bring it to us when it's good, I don't know if I like the attitude of those people, but I think there is some sense in what they're saying, in as much as it's never been easier to be able to produce that kind of first little diamond in the rough that can get kind of cleaned up quite easily. And people on our team have had from loads of technical experience to no technical experience. And that process of collaboration has been easier than I've ever found it before. So, people, just connect.
I'll actually add one note to that, that we originally also had gotten a grant from UKRI that was like a technical development grant that allowed us to hire Ale, who's our AI developer and researcher who, crafted our persona. And, I used to live in London and I'm back in the States now, and just how important funding like this is to be able to create creative projects and to try experimenting and working with these new mediums. That's so important, especially right now with everything that is going on in the world, but particularly my home country.
Yeah, I would just add, the landscape's never been more competitive. And the reason that we actually also develop things in VR is you do need to demonstrate to sales agents and distributors you are competent and you can make stuff. And it's about building in an audience, kind of what we were saying earlier, of if you're creating these things and demonstrating there's an audience there, you're just adding a safety net for them to be able to want to back and build your project. And when they have a million scripts coming through the door, if they see something that's been executed and it's done really well and you've been able to attach talent or names, it's going to just bolster that project. It's huge. And so it's kind of just thinking about your strategy there and what you can do to safeguard their investment. They're about to put their money and time into a project, so how can you make it as appealing to them as you possibly can?
And what gives it worth? What gives it worth? Is there a brand, for example, ours is the origin story of Mercedes Benz. Well, it would make sense to go to them to partner with, which hopefully we are. We'll find out soon. But thinking outside the box about other revenue sources that can really bolster getting it made.
Yeah, branded content this year is going to be everything. So
I think we have time for one other question. Last row.
Thank you. I was interested in the journey of Pirate Queen from VR to feature film. For the filmmakers in this room, do you have tips as to how to deploy, transfer those tools you've used in VR into the filmmaking linear paradigm, the 90 minutes drama, in terms of previs, pre-production, post-production, production, and so on, and the ability to perhaps save on cost while also enhancing the production values?
Yeah, really good question. Pirate Queen, we're turning from a VR project into a TV series. And we're turning it into an animated TV series. So we're creating a new pipeline where we're using the assets from the game and what we created in Unreal Engine, and we're repurposing them to make it into an animated show. And it's sort of the first time that this pipeline has been developed. And as a result, it means that the budget for the streamer will be significantly less because our artists have just spent the last 3 years developing all of these assets. And it also reduces the timeline as well. So instead of releasing in, say, 2030, we can release in 2028. So it's this really interesting way of sort of using new tech and being able to adopt the practices that we're developing in VR and then taking it to streamers and to wide stream sort of distributors to demonstrate the future. I think with TRAILBLAZER, what's been so interesting is that we have actually started developing the story with Les and her team, and we're adopting a writer's room. And when Les tried the VR experience for the first time, she even said, this is the perfect previs. We've got all of the music, the sound design, we've created a mood and an environment that allows the creatives on the film to now be able to bring that to life in a really visceral way that you can't do in the same way as just reading a script.
Yeah, and it's about taking the emotion of a moment, because ultimately, this VR experience is not that long, but it's a moment, it's a feeling, and really building that out into a 90-minute story.
before we finish the conversation, I'd like to know where the audience can experience these works. tAxI is still here in Cannes. For how long?
Yeah, we are up until the 23rd. It's part of the Immersive selection at the Carlton, 3 floors down.
And do you know already where the tAxI will be next?
We are bringing tAxI back to London for now, before looking for touring partners and adapting it into bigger formats.
What about TRAILBLAZER? You were saying end of the month?
Yeah, so we're also premiering at Cannes. We're out of competition. So if you go to into the Carlton -3 and go to the front desk and ask for a private screening, then you'll be able to check it out. But we've just released TRAILBLAZER on Meta Quest. So if you have a Meta VR headset, you can just go onto the store and type in TRAILBLAZER with Daisy Ridley, and it will come up and you can check it out. And it's free, so you can just dive in whenever suits.
Yeah, so we can all enjoy driving the first motor car. Please do. And thank you very much. And I will suggest a round of applause for our guest speakers. Thank you again.